Kouri Richens' trial is underway, and in this video, I'm going to break down the key evidence that stacked against her, including some of the text messages that she sent to the man she was having an affair with. Welcome to Criminal Motives. My name is Matthew Pfeiffer. I'm a therapist, coach, author, and toxic relationship specialist. And on this channel, I give my thoughts and reactions to different events that are happening in true crime. With all that being said, let's get into today's episode.
At their home near Park City, Utah in March of 2022. Prosecutors in Summit County say that Cory poisoned Eric with a fatal dose of fentanyl because A, she was in debt from her real estate ventures, and B, she was having an affair and wanted to be with another man and not Eric, and she didn't want a messy battle over custody of their children. Now, you might be asking yourself, where would Kouri Richens get fentanyl? Well, in the last couple of months, prosecutors revealed that Cory had actually asked a housekeeper to get fentanyl for her. A detective testified that he interviewed the housekeeper who claimed she had given Kouri Richens an opiate and counterfeit opiate pills. And there's more. Unsealed search warrants show a handyman working on Kouri Richens' properties told investigators that Cory asked him to get her both fentanyl and propofol. Propofol is a powerful anesthetic. It's the drug that killed Michael Jackson. That man has since died, but his phone, including text messages of the exchanges with Kouri Richens, are with police. Now, earlier this year, prosecutors actually laid out much of their case in a 31-page document. Prosecutors say Kouri Richens killed Eric Richins on March 3rd or 4th of 2022 by poisoning him, as I mentioned. But a month earlier on Valentine's Day, she had actually tried to do the very same thing, but failed. That's according to the prosecution. Now, prosecutors say Richens bought fentanyl from a...
Something about the first attempt that Cory did that isn't being explained here in this video is that Eric actually went to his sister after the first attempt and said that, I believe that my wife is trying to kill me. So in the trial, Cory is, her defense is trying to say that that she's being framed by Eric's family or Eric's parents, by her in-laws, and that they are the ones that actually want the money, that want Eric's life benefits, life insurance benefits, and that they're trying to frame her over this. But when this point comes up and the sister-in-law testifies, and at the time of this recording, she will have already testified, you will hear that Eric contacted not only the sister, but Eric's brother-in-law, which is the husband of his sister, of the sister that's going to take the stand, and told them that Cory was trying to kill him. And not only that, and I think that one of the things that's going to be important when it comes to court is that Eric didn't just believe that Cory was trying to kill him. He took steps to ensure and talked to people to ensure what would happen in the event that something like that would happen. The reason why that becomes important, especially when it comes to court, is that it shows intent. It shows that he truly actually was concerned. This wasn't just hearsay. This wasn't just something. And so what he did is that he put the trust, the beneficiary, he made his sister the beneficiary of his trust. Now, Cory is trying to allege and trying to say that the family is framing her, but these are steps that Eric took before he passed away. So I think that that's something that is going to be looked at in court. Pay attention to that little factor during the trial as it unfolds and as it comes out.
Person who had previously been identified as witness 4, likely the housekeeper that month. But let's go back to the very beginning of this story. Cory and Eric Richins were married in 2013, and they had a prenup. Cory sold real estate in South Carolina, but then opened her own real estate venture, Kouri Richens Real Estate, in 2019. Richins flipped houses and funded this venture using a $250,000 home equity line of credit from a home that Eric Richins owned prior to marrying Cory. Prosecutors say that it appeared on the outside that Kouri Richens' real estate business was doing really well, but
so this $250 loan that she took out was against Eric's will. It was something that he not only did not know about, allegedly, but one of the things that you're going to hear in testimony and on trial is that once he found out, he went directly to his sister and his brother-in-law, and they were the ones that helped him figure out what happened. And because the sister and the brother-in-law owned the home previous to Eric owning the home. And so they were able to pretty quickly figure out, where this line of credit came from. Obviously came from Cory. And now the defense is going to try and paint this as though this is marital property. These are marital assets. And so Cory, quote, has a right to do these type of things, even if it's egregious, even if she's even if she's a bad wife. So one of the things that I think that you're going to see illustrated in court is Cory, what I call falling on her sword, where she's going to claim a lot of things. The defense is going to claim a lot of things as though she's more of a bad wife, but not necessarily a murderer. Yes, this is financial infidelity. No, she didn't say anything to Eric, but she still had a right to be able to do it because she's married and they moved in together. And so she's able to do these things. But that doesn't necessarily make her a murderer. And so even though through this video, you're going to see and you're going to hear a lot of evidence, some of the evidence, when they break it down, the defense is going to paint this as though Cory is a bad wife, but not a murderer. Right. So as we go through this, let's listen to these things and let's see if this evidence is truly damning or if there truly actually is a defense to it.
Really? They say that a forensic accountant will testify that she was borrowing money at really high interest rates to fund this venture. At one point in 2021, prosecutors say Richins defaulted on a loan and was sued by Greengrass Holdings 3 months before Eric Richins died. And according to prosecutors, Eric Richins didn't know that Cory took out that $250,000 home equity line of credit until someone at his bank told him. Prosecutors cite an October 2020 text message exchange between Richins and a friend where Richins wrote, "I don't know what to do. If he thinks that I owe him money, then that's fine. I'll pay whatever he thinks and then I'm out. It's getting a little out of hand." The friend asked, "How much did you take out?" Richins responded, "A lot." The friend then asked, "How long do you think it would take to pay it back?" Richins responded, $250,000. It will take me a couple of months until my investments pay out. So I just got to be top-notch careful. There's nothing more important to me than the boys and making sure custody is always going to be at least 50-50. And if he digs and finds something, I don't want him hiring some expensive attorney to fight for the kids or something. Prosecutors say there's a big problem with that text message. They say a forensic accountant will testify that Kouri Richens didn't have any investments that she could sell or cash in to pay back that loan. And it was over advanced by $254,000. Now, on the day that Eric Richins died, prosecutors say Kouri Richens owed $3.1 million. She had purchased more properties and borrowed more money, but she wasn't making any money. At the time that Eric Richins died in March of 2022, prosecutors say his estate was worth $5 million and his life was insured for more than $2 million. On top of this financial mess, prosecutors say Kouri Richens was having an affair. Prosecutors quote witness 8 as saying that Kouri Richens feared that leaving Eric Richins would be difficult and that his family would use their considerable wealth to fight her for custody of the kids. 8 said in December of 2021 that Richins said it would be better if Eric was dead. The following day, prosecutors say Richins texted her paramour, I'm in love with a man that's not my husband. I want to, but I can't break up my family. It's having our cake and eating it too. I just want to love you. Then in January of 2022, prosecutors say someone accessed a $2 million life insurance policy for the business partner of Eric Richins, changing it to Kouri Richens and then back to Eric. Prosecutors believe Cory didn't realize that the policy was actually for the business partner. That same month, Cory consulted a divorce lawyer, but ended those talks telling her brother she didn't want half of everything, but wanted to walk away clean and free. Then prosecutors say she started researching illegal drugs and asking people how to get fentanyl. In late January, prosecutors say Kouri Richens took out a $100,000 insurance policy on Eric Richins, forging his signature and having those documents sent to her P.O. box. Then on Valentine's Day, prosecutors say Kouri Richens poisoned takeout food that she bought for Eric Richens with fentanyl pills a friend had purchased from someone identified as Witness 5. Eric Richens texted a person identified as Witness 1, a close friend that day at 1:59 p.m., "You almost lost me." Richens told the friend that Kouri Richens had given him a sandwich with a note, that he had eaten part of it and then broke out in hives. He tried to treat himself. Then 12 minutes later at 2:11 p.m., Richens called another friend identified as Witness 2 and said, "I think I almost died. I think my wife tried to poison me." Richens had become ill and blacked out. The judge in the case voiced interest in those comments at a hearing earlier this year.
I am most acutely interested in defense's position regarding Witness 1 and Witness 2, especially 1:59 p.m. for Witness 1 and 2:11 p.m. for Witness 2.
I'll make sure to adjust that.
Okay.
Prosecutors say Eric Richens tried to text Cory that afternoon, but she didn't answer. And then she continued to plan for life without Eric Richens. The next day, Kouri Richens texted the Paramour, "If I were divorced right now and asked you to marry me tomorrow, you would? And I just want to lay on the couch and cuddle you, watch a murder documentary and snuggle." The following month, prosecutors say that Kouri Richens carried out her ultimate goal of poisoning and killing Eric Richens.
One of the things, and I'm sure they'll bring it up in trial, but Cory's behavior after this first poisoning, where it didn't take and he just broke out in hives, her behavior after that, and then also her behavior after he passed away, I think is going to tell a lot. Very similar to the Menendez brothers, their behavior afterwards, where they went on a spending spree and those sorts of things, I think is going to be a really big point in the trial. Not only after Eric's death, I believe it was like a month later, where she flew to, went to on a trip with her now new with her boyfriend at the time, or the guy that she was having an affair with. Obviously these allegations of the thing of how she was behaving, texting the guy she was having an affair with after her husband almost passed away. And I'm curious to see in trial, aside from the obvious, what led Eric to believe that his wife was trying to poison him. The reason why I say that is that him just eating that sandwich that day, there had to have been some things leading up to that event that led him to believe that something was happening. There had to have been some other behavior. And so I'm going to be curious, and I'm going to be listening hard to people's testimony to see if there was something aside from just the sandwich poisoning that led Eric to believe that something was happening. Now, I do know that after he discovered the $250,000 loan, he was talking about getting a divorce. He was starting to line up divorce attorneys. I'm not sure if he felt like she was going to do something after that point, if there was things that she mentioned when it was just the two of them, or what reason he had to believe outside of the sandwich thing to believe that had this type of capability.
Prosecutors say Kouri Richens' cell phone movements that night did not match the story she told detectives. I want to bring in Lauren Matthias. She is the co-host of the Hidden True Crime YouTube channel. It's a very popular podcast. And Lauren, you have been following this case very, very closely. And I want to know what you think is maybe the most important piece of evidence, if you can pinpoint it, pointing to Kouri Richens' guilt. Because she says, I didn't do this. I did not kill my husband.
She does, and yet there is so much evidence pointing towards the charges, in my opinion. But I think, honestly, a lot of it is her requesting the fentanyl that prosecutors say took Eric Richins' life on in March of 2022, and that is that she was requesting her housekeeper Carmen, hey, by the way, I need fentanyl, and that the first time she requested that was in February, and then Eric has stated, he feels like he was poisoned on Valentine's Day with a sandwich, and then the second time that Carmen requests or that Kouri Richens requests this fentanyl is right before Eric dies, and the prosecutors say it was a Moscow Mule. She was also having an affair, and so there's this sort of, as I say, this classic scenario of here's the affair. It's like money, it's drugs, and it's sex. It's like your classic motives, and there's so much evidence for each of those things: having an affair with a handyman, requesting a housekeeper for fentanyl, and we now know of another employee, another handyman who recently died in a motorcycle accident, actually, that also said that he had been asked for fentanyl by Kouri Richens. He recently died, but not before showing law enforcement these texts that he had with Kouri Richens. So now we have multiple witnesses.
I have to imagine at trial, and I've talked to a family spokesperson for Eric Richens' family about this before, that the defense will be that, well, Eric Richens was using fentanyl or he was a drug addict and nobody knew about it. I mean, that's where I think this is going to go. I could be completely off base in saying that, but.
So that is a place that this trial is likely going to end up going. So I'm going to be doing another video, another breakdown. The fact that they don't know, long story short, the fentanyl is the smoking gun in this case, is obviously the murder weapon. And no one can find the fentanyl. And at least at the time of this recording, there was no traces of the fentanyl. And there was definitely traces of fentanyl in Eric's system, but not necessarily in his glass. And there was no like bottles of fentanyl or anything like that, like in the house. Now, that's something that can go either way. The fact that there was no fentanyl through the house can go either way. That's something that the defense can use, saying basically that, hey, if Cory really actually did this, like, where's the fentanyl? Right? Why, this was obviously something that Eric did, or something that he was using was laced with fentanyl. But I also think, and I actually think that it's a stronger argument for the prosecution, because the prosecution obviously would say, if the reason why there is no fentanyl anywhere in the house is because obviously Cory hid it because she wanted to hide the murder weapon, so to speak. And I also think that, I'm sure that they've tested like the THC gummies that Eric has used and things like that to see that there isn't any lacing on anything else. And so, I even though I do think that this is going to come up in trial, I think that's going to be an argument that is going to be highly, highly contested in this trial. It'll be interesting to see how each of the sides kind of presents that.
Greg Skordas has told me many times, Eric Richins did not use drugs. He was not a drug addict. This is not somebody who was asking his wife to go get the drugs for him. Do you think that's where they're going to go with her defense?
I think they could, but it might backfire too. And let me tell you why. I think while that might be in the defense's tool belt, it's also something that could help the defense because Anjanette, no fentanyl was ever found. And I think that's actually one of the defense's golden arguments they might use is show us the fentanyl. That certainly came up at Kouri Richens' preliminary hearing. They're like, hey, look, the law enforcement never found any fentanyl. So where is it? So if they try, my point is, if they try that, then the defense will have to say, hey, where, the prosecution should say, well, where's this fentanyl that you're claiming Eric Richins was using? Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like this double-edged sword that the defense is clearly from the preliminary hearing where I was at the preliminary hearing. One of the defense's main argument was show us the fentanyl. And so if they use that, then where's the fentanyl that Eric Richins used? Do you know what I mean? So it'll be interesting if they attempt that.
You mentioned earlier, this case has it all. And there are the text messages. She's talking with this guy that she's having the affair with, talking about wanting to snuggle up and watch a murder documentary and all of this stuff. I mean, yikes. You've actually been to the house. There was this huge house that she was trying to build out in the middle of the nowhere. And that was really one of the downfalls, the prosecution says in this case, this monstrosity of a house that a lot of people say really didn't fit where she was building it. And it sounds like the prosecution's going to say, look, she was trying to make it as this real estate investor, realtor, house flipper, but she just didn't have the knack for it. And she was trying to cover all of that up. So this house is kind of just like this huge house that never really was completed, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. So tell me about that, because you've been out there.
Yeah, I recently visited that house because it's still not finished, although it does have new owners who say they are going to finish it and make it a family home. It's massive, a swimming pool, 2 kitchens, a climbing wall, a golf simulator, all of these, it is fancy. I think 12 bathrooms. So this plays a big part too, because you're right, money and fraud is a big part of this case. And it's part of the motive. Again, there wasn't just an affair. There was also this, Kouri Richens was in a lot of debt, and it was secret debt that she wasn't even telling Eric, her own husband, about all of the debt and all of her investments. And according to Kouri Richens, and this is something I think the defense will try to say, is that Kouri Richens' story is, hey, I was buying this ginormous property, this gigantic property, and Eric was on board. He was so excited because they were going to flip this. They were going to finish building it and then flip it. And hey, Eric was on board. And what we were doing that night, the night that Eric Richins died, is we were celebrating that my offer of $2 million was accepted for this home. But then we hear that it was after Eric Richins' death that she threw a party celebrating the deal had gone through just after her husband's death. And so it actually not only, I think, is what happened, that the prosecution is going to say, hey, actually, this is what she claimed happened, but it really didn't happen because Eric didn't want any part of this property. Cory was going into severe debt on her own. All of Kouri Richens' investments were on her own. And she even does actually even have 2 counts of mortgage fraud. They won't be part of this trial that's coming up at the end of April. They're actually going to be a separate trial, but she also has those charges as well. So I think that they'll say is, hey, look, no, Cory was doing this on her own. And the fact that they were celebrating, that just doesn't hold water.
How important do you think, and do you think it will matter at all, the grief book? Do you think that comes into this at all, as prosecutors saying possibly that this was a cover? Obviously she's going to say, I was trying to help my children. My children lost their father. And she's
one thing, and I wanted to pause here before we get into the book thing. One thing about Cory, I believe that she cares a lot about people's perception of her. And the reason why I say that is, and the reason why I bring that up is that I believe that that's also a large part of the motive with the murder. What I mean by that is that in her community, and I've done a couple of episodes and a couple of videos of true crime cases that seem like there's a lot of things happening in Utah. In particular, in areas where there are high populations of LDS community. Now, this isn't a anti-LDS video or anything like that. But from what I understand, Cory was not a part of the LDS church, but Eric was. And that's a high population of LDS community. I did a video on Ruby Frankie, another Utah family, right? That's part of the LDS community. And I believe I did another one, but I've definitely done some shorts on the reason why I bring this up is that that community, even if you're not a part of the community, the church, the community still frowns upon and still has their opinions about people who go through divorce. As a therapist, I've also worked with a lot of clients in Utah. And so I have a lot of experience with people who have, who may not even be a part of the church, but get ostracized or looked at sideways or side-eyed by people in the community because they've been through a divorce. Well, now they're a single mom, or now they have this stain on their life, so to speak. So the reason why I bring this up is that for some people, and this won't make any sense. It'll make sense and it won't make sense all at the same time. But for some people, and I want to go back to that text message that she sent to her boyfriend, to the guy she was cheating with, that she said that it would just be good. It would be better off if Eric just died, right? Not divorced, not leave, not run away and live together or anything like that, but it would be better off if he just died. So, and when we look at that, and we also look at some of the things that she said in terms of the kids, and a lot of times people look at the children as kind of like a trophy, right? People have different types of mindsets, especially if they're like on the cluster B spectrum. Look at children as trophies, not in like a healthy sense of like, I'm so proud of my kids, but more of like, I won the war, right? Or if I'm able to keep the kids, if I'm able to get, you heard her say like at least 50% custody or anything or something like that. The perception is that that I'm doing okay, that I'm fine, and that that the divorce wasn't my fault. There's a lot of people that would much rather that other person. Let me rephrase. There's some people, it's like they don't want to be with that person, but they also don't want to change. They don't want to better the relationship at all. It's much easier for them to start over, right, with a new person and start fresh and start clean and those sorts of things. But they also don't necessarily want the other person to end it with them, because then it looks as though that there's something wrong with them. They don't want to experience the rejection, but they also don't want to be the one. They also don't want to be the villain who ends the relationship. So in their mind, the only other option is death. Even though someone in their right mind would know and understand that there's plenty of other options, right? Therapy, trying to get stopping the affair, getting things right being honest with the husband and saying that you don't, or wife in some circumstances that you don't want to be with them anymore. Which, by the way, if you are struggling in a divorce or relationship or high conflict divorce, if you're anticipating high conflict divorce, if you go into the links in my bio, go to we are partnered with BetterHelp. Click on the link down below. You'll get 15% off your first month of therapy. Be sure to work with them, especially if you're working with in a domestic violence situation, because you can work from the comfort and convenience of your home or office, or while you're on your lunch break, those sorts of things. That way you can keep your private life private, and especially for those of you who might be in a domestic violence situation, or if you're not ready to have that conversation with someone that could escalate, get 15% off your first month of therapy. But all that being said, some people would rather someone pass away, right? Because in their mind, and this is the reason why I wanted to mention all this going into the book, it's much easier to live life as the victim. I said this in a video a few years back, and people wanted to have my head for this, but it's true, and you can look this up. It's pretty much it's pretty well documented that some people who are abusive and problematic, especially in relationships, would much rather play victim, right? And some people see that as victim blaming, but the reality of it is that some people who are abusive, that's the way that they get away with it, is playing victim. And so as we segue over into the book, right, we now kind of see and I mentioned Kouri's behavior after her husband's death, right? The vacation with her, with Robert, the other guy, obviously this book. And one of the things about the book is that it's very common for people who write their first book to think they're going to make millions and millions of dollars off their first book. And so this obviously was like self-published through Amazon. You know, I think that she possibly thought that like this was kind of like a book tour that she was going to be able to go on and be able to like promote it. And that her in her victimhood of, you know, this new single mother who's a widow and just lost her husband to a tragic event. And, you know, I think that she initially thought that this would go better than what it actually did. But let me know your thoughts in the comments and comments below on that. And let's get back into this.
She's pleaded not guilty. She maintains she did not commit this crime. Do you think that comes into evidence in some way, shape, or form?
The grief book is fascinating, especially when it comes to the human interest story of this. I think the grief book, you know, she's known as grief book mom oftentimes. The grief book and the fact that she allegedly wrote or helped to write this book on grief for her children and went on the local news to promote this book is certainly compelling. And I think it's the reason that the story hit the media so quickly. As far as evidence that was shown at the preliminary hearing, it didn't actually come up. I think it could come up. I think Kouri Richens might bring it up. I think Kouri Richens will likely testify at her own trial. From what her defense attorney is saying, Kathy Nestor is actually saying, look, if my client testifies, it's going to be lengthy. But I don't know if that's going to be like this major piece of evidence. Compelling, definitely. A solid piece of evidence in this convoluted story, I'm not so sure.
What about?
In my opinion, I don't think it's a very strong piece of evidence. Now, I think to everyone listening, watching, I think that we, people who are observing kind of knows that this is what it is. However, in terms of like actual like court evidence, I just don't think that it's something that would. I don't think that it was like something that would hold up. I don't even know if it's something that you would be able to prove that was something like a motivation, like of her killing her husband. She may not even have thought about writing the book until after he had passed, and thought of it as a way of a means of, gaining money and gaining access. What I do think, though, what I do believe, is that it speaks to her mindset. It speaks to her mindset of you'll if you do this long enough, you'll hear this statement phrased in a lot of different ways. I'm just a mom. I'm just a mom. I did a video on the whole Caleb, what's his name? Caleb situation, the American Idol / pastor that allegedly killed his wife. Same thing. I'm just a dad. Right. If you watch the video when he was in court, I'm just a dad. I just need to get back to my girls. Right. And they use that as a defense mechanism where like I'm overly simplified. I'm overly victimized, so to speak. I just need to get back to my girls. I just need to get back to my boys. I just, this is a simple thing, and this is just overcomplicating thing, and I just need to get back to my perfect life, right? And so, I think that speaks to that mindset of using these type of things as a defense of like the perfect life, and I'm just a perfect mom, and those sorts of things. But I don't think it's a very strong piece of evidence.
the comment that, and I don't know if it would come in at all. It may very well not, but I found it so interesting when she was saying to a Dateline producer, she apparently passed a Dateline producer earlier in the year saying something as she was walking out of the hallway, and passed a note saying something to the effect of, "This is war," or something like that. Like, she is defiant. I mean, she is going to fight this.
She is absolutely defiant. She has stuck to her story.
One thing about that. So I just reviewed and saw what they're talking about with this whole Dateline producer thing. There's actually a recording of it. I believe it was like either on a phone call. It wasn't like from the way that I interpreted it, it wasn't anything like this is war like towards the producer, but this is war like obviously like in court. Some people lie to the point where they believe their own lies, and I believe this is the reason why she is so adamant about. Obviously, it's innocent until proven guilty, but I think that you might know where my stance is with this, with the evidence that's stacked up against her. There's some people that truly believe, like, they will twist and spin things and gaslight until they get to a point where they actually believe it themselves. And I think that that's what makes matters difficult for some people who are really good liars and really convincing. And sometimes even on a much lower scale, they will put up a fight just to get people to give up. And I wouldn't be surprised. Well, let me rephrase. I was going to say I wouldn't be surprised if we hear something like that come out in trial. We actually already did. So the sister-in-law, Kouri, and the sister-in-law got into a physical fight over Cory hiring a locksmith to get into the safe to access the trust that was in the sister-in-law's name, that Eric had reassigned her into the beneficiary. The reason why I bring this up is that I believe that Cory has a belief system that if she puts up enough of a fight and puts up enough of a tantrum, so to speak, that this will just kind of all just go away. That's more than likely like how she's maneuvered through life, period. But when things escalate to this point, typically, you're pretty much up a creek. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below.
Or even possibly changed her story, but in no way has she accepted any responsibility. And the fact that she even wants to testify, in my opinion, shows that she has things to say and wants her moment on the stand to tell her story, which is not the story of the prosecution. I think Defiance is a great way to explain Kouri Richens.
Any final thoughts, Lauren?
I think that this case is going to be interesting. A lot of people have said, admittedly, that they think this is a done deal, that this is going to be easy, that they're going to convict Kouri Richens because of the evidence that the prosecution has. I will say that I actually think the defense will have a good defense. And I brought it up. The fact that they don't have the pills that they say Eric Richins took the day he overdosed on fentanyl, I think is a good piece of or lack of evidence that the defense will be able to use. I think this is going to be a fascinating trial, especially again if we hear Kouri Richens testify. But I also don't think that this is just like an easy win for the prosecution. I do think that the defense has things to say and will have some good arguments.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I don't think that this is going to be as easy or as a open and shut case situation as what people might actually think. I actually think that the whole fentanyl, not knowing where the pills are, the fact that Eric has some level of drug use. Now it's very light. It's just, we're talking about THC gummies, things like that. But the reason why I think that it's more important, why it becomes big, is that you have to convince it. I'm a former substance use therapist, so I get this. I get that life, right? I understand that very thoroughly. Are we sure that a jury understands that? Right? Are we positive that everyone understands that, like, him going to buy THC gummies from your local smoke shop, right, is not likely to be laced with fentanyl at, especially at those like extreme levels? Are we sure that, if they bring up some other time where he, got high or something along those lines, in his past, that they're not going to be convinced that that he does have like some level of a substance use problem? So that part we really don't know, where we have the smoking gun. Now there's a lot of other circumstantial evidence with the debt, the massive amounts of debt. I actually think that the debt and the man she's having an affair with are going to be what turns this trial over for the jury, right? So I do think that she's going to end up being found guilty. I think there's just too much evidence that's stacked against her, even without the fentanyl pills. I think there's just too much, and I think that I also think that it's very difficult to argue some of those text messages, and I think it's very difficult to argue some of the conversations. The other thing is that, like, her asking the cleaners for pills, for fentanyl pills, and something that wasn't brought up today in this video is the fact that she paid the cleaners from her business account. The reason why that becomes important is because, like, if you were buying them for your husband, you'd probably just use the joint account, right? Because there's no hiding it or anything like that. So there's no need to hide it. But using the business account to pay the cleaners, I think becomes a very big deal. And then also, if you did buy those pills for the fentanyl for your husband, there would be no reason to hide it, right? There would be no reason for them to be missing. So, and I touched on that earlier, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. With all that being said, thank you guys very much for dropping by. I will see you in the next episode. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're notified each and every time I upload a new video. Also, if you're going down into links down in the description, if you're considering therapy, be sure to use BetterHelp. You'll get 15% off your first month of therapy. You'll be able to work with a licensed therapist from the comfort and convenience of your home. With all that being said, thank you very much, and I will see you in the next episode. You guys have a good one.